Okay. Chapter 14, My God Answers Prayers. If I thought if I thought there was any chance that it might work, I would pray that every member of Al-Qaeda reads this book, realizes that his religious beliefs might be in error, and vows never to kill in the name of a god ever again. I would also pray that those millionaire televangelists stop making money from hardworking, low-income people because a god, quote-unquote, needs it. Unfortunately, there is no convincing evidence that praying works, so I won't bother. Requesting something by prayer is such a common practice that few believers ever stop to think about just how incredible a claim it is. People who say prayer works are claiming that we can ask a God for something, just about anything, from good health to winning a war, and the God will consider our request and possibly grant our wish. Some even say the God is obligated to grant our wish based on their interpretation of ancient writings. Despite the extraordinary nature of this claim, millions of people seem to go along with it without much thought, and despite results that could more easily be explained as chance or as caused by the actions of people, they think it really works. One would think that prayer could be analyzed or measured in a way that made it clear, even to non-believers, that it's a real phenomenon. Prayer is important to the big question of whether or not a god or gods exist, because many believers cite it as a primary reason for thinking that their God is real. It really could be the elusive proof for a God that atheists are always asking for. Imagine if the followers of one religion consistently had their prayers answered at a very high rate, high enough to discount chance, misinterpretation, or fraud. It would be powerful evidence that their God is real, but of course, we do not see this. What we see are Hindus, Jews, Christians, Muslims, animists, and other believers praying to their respective gods in their specific ways and then claiming that their prayers work. The fact that followers of so many contradictory belief systems claim that their prayers achieve positive results is a bad sign for prayer proponents. For example, members of pre-industrial tribes pray to a variety of gods for things like successful hunts and good weather all the time. And often they got what they asked for, but that's not proof that their gods are real. Nor is it proof that Yahweh, Jesus, Allah, or Vishnu are real when their respective believers get the results they prayed for. Selective memory probably is the reason so many believers in many different religions think that their prayers work. For example, imagine a devout Christian who prays to Jesus for more money, and then after 10 years of working hard and showing up at the office on time every day, she gets a raise. She might feel that this event in her life is confirmation that her God is real. After all, she prayed to Jesus for more money and she got more money. After all, case closed, right? I mean, at least in her mind. But would a typical Muslim accept this? Will he reject the Quran and begin believing that Jesus is a God based on this claim of a prayer answered by Jesus? It's doubtful, especially if the Muslim has experienced his own prayer successes that confirm to him that Allah is the only true God. What about Jews who pray in their particular way to their God? They say their prayers get answered too. Millions of Hindus claim positive results from their prayers. Does it prove the existence of the Hindu gods? Mormon prayers get answered all the time, at least according to Mormons. Does that prove that Jesus was in North America like the Book of Mormon claims? If Tom Cruise prays for a box office hit next summer and gets it, would that mean the claims of Scientology are true? People in ancient Rome prayed, and surely some of them believed that the gods answered their prayers on some occasions. If a Christian prayer can be called proof of Jesus, then a Roman prayer must be proof of Jupiter. What is it that convinces believers that prayers work? I mean, if it did, if one really could get a God to grant wishes, wouldn't it be a lot more obvious that it worked? And wouldn't we know which God was more likely to answer prayers by now? I mean, after several thousand years of praying, wouldn't trial and error have us all praying to the same God in the same way by now if there was something to this? Isn't it possible that believing in prayer is a big mistake? Couldn't it be that believers simply are making the honest and common error of selective accounting when they review their personal prayer histories? Mistakes of this kind are easy to make, and we all should be on guard against it. It seems to be human nature to focus on the few hits and forget all about the many misses when it comes to something we want to be true. Psychologists call it confirmation bias, and psychics know all about it. When psychics claim to talk to dead people or predict a customer's future, they know that they only have to be right a few times because most people will forget the incorrect statements. Confirmation bias explains why many people believe in psychics, even after they stumble through numerous incorrect statements. So when believers get excited about quote unquote answered prayers, it may have something to do with them forgetting all the prayers that resulted in nothing. People who do this are nothing more than the victims of a normal psychological phenomenon. Their only fault is thinking like a typical human. It has nothing to do with intelligence, and it can happen to anyone. Believers might also keep in mind that some quote unquote answered prayers are not good evidence that a God is really at work, for the simple fact that some requests are bound to turn out positively no matter what. For example, imagine if I was to list 10 reasonable hopes for the coming year, such as, I hope I sell my car for a great price, and I hope a hurricane doesn't rip off the roof of my house. Then I record what happens over the next year. I'm sure that some of my hopes would be fulfilled and some would not. Would the fact that some of my wishes came true meant that I have magical wishing powers? Of course not. This is just the way the real world functions. Some things work out like we hope, and others don't. Comedian George Carlin has a lot to say about religion. Most of it is too rude to include in a book that is meant to be respectful of believers. However, this commentary on prayer is not too harsh, and it makes the point very well. Carlin says he gave up on praying to a God because the answer rate was unsatisfactory. So he started praying to Academy Award-winning actor Joe Pesci instead. Here's what he said. So I've been praying to Joe for about a year now, and I noticed something. I noticed that all the prayers I used to offer to God and all the prayers I now offer to Joe Pesci are all being answered about the same 50% rate. Half the time I get what I want, half the time I don't. Same as God, 50-50. Same as the four-leaf clover and the horseshoe and the wishing well and the rabbit's foot. Same as the mojo man, same as the voodoo lady who tells you your fortune by squeezing the testicles. It's all the same, 50-50. So just pick your superstition, sit back, make a wish, and enjoy yourself. Carlin is funny and right. Ask for 100 things in the name of anything or anyone, and you are bound to luck out on some of them. Praying to Joe Pesci, ridiculous as it is likely to generate a success rate that is similar to praying to Jupiter, Jock, Jesus, or any other god. Health is a big concern for everyone sooner or later, and prayer is often used by believers as a way of trying to fend off sickness and death. There may or may not be ways to conclusively test whether or not prayer works for this. Several studies in recent years have tried, but none have shown that prayer works and held up to scrutiny. This alone indicates strong reason for doubt. Something that is supposedly so powerful should not be difficult to detect if it was really making an impact on human health. Let's consider a special type of prayer for health, one that should have a very good chance of getting a God's attention. If any prayer works, one would think it would be a mother's prayer for the health of her baby. Few prayers are more sincere or more passionately delivered, especially if the baby is seriously ill. Unfortunately, these prayers do not seem to work well at all. This is obvious because there are many highly religious nations with horrible infant mortality rates. Meanwhile, highly secular nations and large percentages of atheists in their populations have very low infant mortality rates. How can this be? Why are the babies of so many atheist mothers faring better than the babies of so many Christian, Muslim, and Hindu mothers? Obviously, the higher the percentage of believers in a society, the more praying is going on. How can prayer advocates explain why so many more babies die in very religious countries, such as Nigeria, Yemen, and Niger, than die in the much less godly countries of Sweden, Denmark, and England? According to the UNICEF report, State of the World's Children in 2007, the 10 countries with the highest death rates for children under the age of 5 are Sierra Leone, Angola, Afghanistan, Niger, Liberia, Somalia, Mali, Chad, Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Equatorial Guinea. These countries have populations that are virtually all Christian, Muslim, or followers of traditional African religions. None of them have a significant number of atheists in their population. No one can doubt that the mothers in these countries pray often and pray hard. But all this effort fails to save a shockingly high number of their babies. To reinforce this point, State of the World's Mothers in 2006, a report issued by Save the Children, ranked the best and worst countries for mothers based on available health care, education, and opportunity, as well as risk for maternal and infant mortality. The list reveals the same pattern of countries with significantly high levels of atheism doing well, and countries with high levels of belief doing poorly. Even believers may wonder if prayers work for anything at all when they can't even save millions of innocent babies who are desperately prayed for by religious mothers. Who on earth is more deserving of a God's help than a baby? Some believers might argue that this disparity is about economics, failed governments, and healthcare deficiencies. I agree. But see, that's a godless explanation. Why should money matter to a God? Certainly, believers think their God is capable of saving a baby, don't they? Whether it's in a state-of-the-art European hospital or in a dimly lit and underfunded African clinic. If prayer works, then it should be able to work anywhere, regardless of the local economy. The claim that prayer works may not go away anytime soon, no matter how many prayers fail. It may be easy to argue against it, but disproving prayer is far more difficult, perhaps impossible. Although I welcome scientific prayer studies, it may be beyond science's ability to deliver a definitive answer. After all, how can researchers accurately record and measure prayer? Prayers can be nothing more than the silent thoughts within the mind of a believer. They can be directed at people, even strangers, thousands of miles away. Believers can pray for people who are not even born yet. How can a researcher even know which God the believer is really praying to, if they are sincere about it, or if they're really praying at all? How can a researcher determine who was prayed for and who wasn't? Some people pray for everybody on earth to be healthy, for example, while others might pray for the early death of all rival believers. Ain't that a bitch? How can researchers know if the subjects are praying or being prayed for in the correct way? Former faith healer Hector Avalos, now a professor of religious studies at Iowa State University and executive director of the Committee for the Scientific Examination of Religion, is well aware of the difficulties. He says, even if someone prayed to the Christian God for healing and that person was healed, it would not prove that the healing was done by the Christian God. All religions claim to have answered prayers. For example, according to the Bhagavad Gita, part of the sacred scriptures of Hinduism, the god Krishna claims that it does not matter which god human beings worship. It is Krishna who answers their prayer. Thus, it would not be scientifically possible to show that it is the Christian God who answered a prayer, even if such a prayer was answered. Now, please forgive this wild thought, but it could be that most believers don't really believe in prayer. That's not as crazy an idea as it sounds. I know that many people make a lot of noise about how prayers can heal AIDS and change the course of hurricanes and get a family member off of booze. But sometimes I wonder if they really believe in it. I mean, after all, it doesn't work most of the time. Privately, at least, many believers must know that praying is no better than hoping. How can they not when sincere believers in every religion fail in relationships, lose jobs, suffer illnesses, die, and so forth every day despite desperate prayers? Believers likely have doubts about prayers, whenever they talk openly about it or not. Dan Barker, the Christian preacher who became an atheist, certainly did. He said, "Looking back, I have to admit that my greatest doubt was the efficacy of prayer. Prayer simply does not work, period. I know that I prayed thousands and thousands of prayers that were a waste of time. That is, I know now that they were a waste of time. But since prayer is such a powerful doctrine of Christianity, I imagine that there was some meaning behind it all. Some say prayer is an important exercise because regardless of the outcome, it puts us in touch with God. But this contradicts the direct teachings of Jesus, where he says, quote, 'And all things Whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. That is in Matthew 21, verse 22. And if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. That is from Matthew 18, verse 19. The writer of 1 John 5, verses 14 through 15 said, quote, "And this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he heareth us. And if we know that he hears us, whatsoever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we desired of him." Honest Christians know that these verses are false. It does no good to claim that many prayers are unanswered because they are not according to his will. Even prayers that are clearly in line with the expressed will of God are rarely successful. Even if this reasoning were valid, it makes prayer useless as a means of changing nature. If prayer worked as well as many believers claim it does, it shouldn't be so difficult to confirm, even for those who are not predisposed to believe it. The fact that it seems to work at about the same rate for all believers, regardless of which gods they pray to, suggests that this is probably about the human tendency to misinterpret chance and coincidence as something special. The Christians and Muslims, for example, who see their quote-unquote answered prayers as proof that their God is real, must face the facts that hundreds of millions of other people say a different God answers their prayers. Of course, all gods cannot be real and all religions cannot be true. Therefore, it is more likely that so many quote-unquote answered prayers from so many sources shows that we have many problems, but also an abundance of hope in our hearts. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but there is nothing about prayer at this time that provides a good reason to believe that gods are real. Chapter 15. I would rather worship my God than the devil. More than once, I have encountered believers who are certain that all atheists are loyal followers of the devil, or at least sympathetic to his mission. Simply because a person is unconvinced that Nanabazo, Hermod, or any other gods are real, some believers jump to the bizarre conclusion that he or she must be one of Satan's soldiers. This is related to the strange notion held by some believers that it is impossible to be a real non-believer. These people literally deny the existence of non-believers. To them, non-believers are nothing more than believers who switched sides and now serve Satan. Apparently, they cannot even imagine how anyone in their right mind cannot believe in at least one God. In an attempt to explain atheists, these believers will insist that non-believers are enemies of God. They are not denying a God's existence. They know the God is real, and they are fighting against him. All talk about non-belief is a smokescreen meant to obscure their real agenda. Yes, for those who doubt it, there really are people who hold this view. I have met several of them, and people wonder why so many atheists keep quiet about their lack of belief. It is, to say the least, awkward and uncomfortable to be thought of as a Satan worshiper. How does one even begin to respond to such an accusation? Such careless thinking can't be excused, of course, but I do understand how believers might not want to carpool or live next door to an atheist when they start out with this assumption. It's sad, however, to think that many believers would keep a fellow human at arm's length for this reason. It's a problem that is more common than most people may imagine. I encourage any non-believer who doubts this to go to Syria and strike up a few conversations at the South about how wonderfully liberating atheism can be. Travel the quote-unquote Bible Belt in America and see how warmly your atheism is received. Visit rural Tanzania and give a few public speeches on the merits of secularism. Good luck. The worst thing about devil paranoia is that many believers are unwilling to consider that their God or gods might be imaginary because of it. They see the slightest movement away from belief in their God as a step toward Satan. Questioning religious claims is seen as being disloyal to their God and a dangerous flirtation with ultimate evil. The result is that many believers never analyze or challenge their beliefs. They may go through their entire life clinging to the baseless beliefs because of this irrational fear. Believers can relax, of course. Atheists are not Satan worshippers, and they are not working to fulfill some evil supernatural agenda. Atheists do not believe in evil supernatural beings with pitchforks and any more than believing in good supernatural beings with halos. The devil is just another god to atheists. He can be dismissed as most likely fiction like all the others because there's not one fucking speck of evidence or a single convincing argument that supports claims for his existence. Believers, please take note. One can be skeptical of gods, even disbelieve in them entirely, and still manage to elude the grasp of Beelzebub. Anyone who really does worship Satan has more in common with Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Jews, and other believers than they do with atheists. Satanists are believers, so anyone who is worried about rubbing elbows with a Satanist should check out their spiritual peers first. There's an odd exception to this, however. The late Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan, promoted a version of Satanism that did not claim Satan or any gods were real, apparently. LaVey was an atheist who ran an organization dedicated to Satan, even though he didn't seem to think Satan existed. Whatever he was thinking, LaVey was not a typical atheist. Virtually every atheist in the world would consider praying to Satan as pointless as praying to any of the popular gods. And even if Satan was real, Satanism seems like the wrong team to join if you think about it. I mean, if one were convinced that Satan existed, and that he or she would probably have to agree that the Bible is accurate because that is the primary source for this character's existence. But according to the Bible, Satan loses in the end. So why would anyone want to join up with him? I mean, whether it's real or fantasy, Satanism makes no sense. It is important to add that despite the preoccupation with the devil that some believers have, there has never been any evidence of a large modern movement of devil worshippers. Stories of Satanists and their human sacrifices are great fodder for campfire stories and sensationalist news reports, but the truth is that the devil has never won the hearts and minds of believers the way other gods have. He is little more than a plot ingredient for scary movies and a reliable scare tactic for religious leaders who want to keep the flock on their toes. I once had a weird and frustrating encounter with a believer who suspected I was in league with the devil. She said that if I wasn't on her God's side, then I had to be on the devil's side. According to her, I was a participant in some great spiritual war that was being waged even as we spoke. I politely explained that I was not, now, nor had I ever been, a member of the devil's party. I assured her that I don't wear a pentagram pendant, although I personally do. Don't own a ram's head mask, I don't either. And never even once plunged a dagger into the belly of a sacrificial virgin to appease the Lord of the underworld, and neither have I. But she shut me up fast when she suggested that I could be an unwitting agent of Satan. Now, that's difficult to respond to, and in fact, I couldn't. How do you reassure someone that you are not unconsciously serving Satan? I mean, if you were, you wouldn't know it. And of course, you'll deny it because the devil is controlling you without your knowledge. Sometimes you just can't fucking win. Undoubtedly, some believers will see this book as a tool of the devil, filled with his lies to fool believers. But my goal is not to trick people into abandoning their gods with clever arguments. I only want to encourage readers to think for themselves and reconsider their justifications for believing in gods. I'm only promoting a little bit of doubt, not declaring some definitive truth. People have to walk away from belief in gods on their own. I cannot do it for them, nor would I want to. If some believers want assurance that this book is not designed to turn people away from their God and into Satan's arms, then let me state clearly that I want people to think just as skeptically about Satan too. Why do so many people believe in the devil anyway? I suppose with many religions, it is a package deal and he comes with the God. The case for the devil's existence, however, is as weak as any god's. Many believers will disagree, of course. To them, the devil is very real. They see evidence for him everywhere. It's astonishing how some believers see the devil's hand in just about everything bad. Drug addiction, murder, bank robberies, illness, and so forth are all the work of Satan, they say. I know that this seems to make perfect sense to believers who have heard it all their lives, but I encourage them to consider an alternative view. Bad things happen all the time, and there is no evidence that any of it is linked to a supernatural being named Satan. Yes, humans misbehave, but there are explanations available for these events that are far more likely to be true. Drug addiction is a problem for many people because of the way the brain reacts to some chemical substances and creates a powerful craving for more. Some people commit violent acts because of aggression. And that is the standard feature of the human mind. Please, people rob banks because that's where the fucking money is. Don't these explanations for bad behavior seem more likely to be true than the claim that we are being manipulated and tempted by the magical spells of an invisible being who lives in a fiery dungeon somewhere? Why do so many believers worry about this Satan character anyway? The whole story about him trying to take over the world seems highly unlikely. Why would he still be chasing that ambitious dream anyway? I mean, if Satan is a fallen angel and he knew the God of the Bible up close and in person while he was in heaven, then wouldn't he know how his story turns out? Why in the world would he still be playing the game? According to the Bible, he loses in the end. Can't Satan read? Believers can be assured that embracing skepticism and reason does not mean one is siding with the devil. Skepticism and reason not only tend to make gods go away, they chase the devil away too. Chapter 16, My God Heals Sick People. The man in the white suit softly sings, "Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah." His song floats on the breeze of a cool Caribbean night. The mood is changing. After an hour of preaching, everyone knows that something very special is coming to Grand Cayman. Each word he sings seems to penetrate every believer. Most are standing now. They have come to this open-air sports stadium to see faith healer Benny Hinn call down miracles from heaven, and now he's about to deliver. The small man with the big stage presence is now in full stride. He keeps singing that same word, hallelujah, over and over. This repetition, combined with dramatic organ music, feels hypnotic. Perhaps it is. Hinn's eyes are closed now. One of his hands slowly extends toward the audience. Occasional shrieks rise and fall from the crowd. Some of the believers begin to twitch, some cry. Many of them reach up with outstretched fingers. Trembling hands flail wildly. It's as if the believers are clawing at heaven, hoping to find a way in. Up on the stage, just 20 feet in front of me, Hinn continues singing that entrancing one-word song. My eyes dart about frantically, trying to take in as much of the emotionally charged scene as I can. I'm drifting in a swirling sea of belief, and the tide is rising. The emotional power of the moment is so intense that even I, a non-believer, feel slightly disoriented. The crying and the screams are louder now. A woman near me falls to her knees and begins convulsing. She looked as though she's reacting to severe electrical shocks. Hinn sings on, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Although I'm skeptical of his ability to facilitate supernatural cures, I can't deny the emotional power of his presentation. His voice, the music, and the crowd he commands all combine to create a potent psychological cocktail. Suddenly, Hinn stops pacing, and his illuminated figure freezes against the black sky behind him. He announces that the Holy Spirit is now with us. It's healing time. New waves of moans and mumbled prayers sweep across the audience. Many believers begin speaking in tongues, that incomprehensible quote-unquote language that some believers claim their God enables them to speak. Hinn continues to work the moment like the master he is. His words are slow and gentle. He is like a kind father talking to his child. Hinn's smile glows. The stylish gray hair never once moves, even as the night wind blows across the stage. God heals today, declares Hinn. I don't know why they fall under the power. It just happens. Hinn's eyes shut tight as he again extends his hand toward the mass of people before him. Some will feel electricity. Some will feel heat all over their body. Some will feel vibrations. Take your healing now. Take your broken body, your broken life, and fix it. Just look up and say, fix it. Contrary to what some people who have seen Hinn on television probably assume, this is when the quote-unquote healings occur at his services. Believers are not healed during Hinn's flamboyant touching action on stage. Those who appear with him on stage have already experienced their quote-unquote miracles while back in their seats. Apparently, that is the only reason they are allowed to go on stage in the first place. The people who end up making contact with Hen are a very select group who claim to have already been healed by their God. On stage, Hen merely applies a sort of final touch to complete their experience. And what a dramatic touch it is. In assembly line fashion, the flamboyant Hen goes to work. Assistants feed him believers alternately from both sides of the stage. At times, the pace seems frantic, as if there is a time limit or some deadline to meet, but this only adds to the excitement. Hen touches the face of a woman who says she had been addicted to drugs for many years. She trembles violently and then collapses into the arms of a man behind her. Now she is, quote, free of the addiction demon, declares Hen. The crowd cheers wildly. The rapid-fire touching continues. A young boy is cured of chronic eczema, says Hen. Arthritis, diabetes, a heart condition, and many more ailments are quote-unquote healed by a god and certified or finalized by Hen this night. I noticed that when believers react strongly by shaking uncontrollably and falling down with above-average flair, Hen usually instructs his assistants to pick them up so he can knock them down again. Believers in the audience explode with approving applause in response to these double and triple doses of the quote-unquote Holy Spirit. Hen repeatedly credits his God for the healings. This is an important detail. Hen wields this incredible power on stage, but then humbly denies having any power at all. I suspect that it makes him even more appealing to believers who might otherwise suspect that he's a little too godlike for their tastes. I have nothing to do with this, Hen says. I'm even more amazed than you are. After a couple of hours of watching Benny Hinn in action up close, I was pretty sure that he was not a middleman or a conduit for a god. I saw nothing to convince me of that. Everything I observed could be explained as nothing more than an audience that was predisposed to play along with a carefully choreographed performance. Remember, Hinn had more than 2,000 years of tradition backing him up that night. It is not difficult to imagine how easy it can be for a revered holy man of any religion to whip up the emotions of a crowd made up almost entirely of true believers. They came with expectations, and Him catered perfectly to those expectations. Call it one man's charisma, gullibility run amok, or maybe the touch of a god. Whenever one concludes about an evening spent with Benny Hinn, his power to stir emotions cannot be denied. Hinn tours the planet healing believers and promoting Christianity. He is supported by millions of fans, and his ministry's annual income reportedly exceeds $100 million. One cannot address popular faith healers without also addressing the issue of money, because there always seems to be lots of money changing hands whenever they come to town. The night I saw him, Hinn became defensive when it was time to pass the plate, or in this case, pass the very large and deep plastic buckets. When you give, it doesn't go to me, he declared. All of it goes to the ministry. Not me, my wife, or my children ever touch 1 cent. Hinn explained that the most important reason he asks people to give him money is so that God will bless them for it. If you have problems, you want to get out of debt, then give tonight. God said, give it and shall be given unto you. God cannot bless you until you put something in his hand. Hinn then informed the audience that his ministry accepts donations by check and credit cards. Scores of assistants fanned out into the crowds with big buckets. Don't just give, he added, so that you can reap a mighty harvest. This is an interesting point Hinn makes at his services because it seems to eliminate any element of altruism from the donation. According to Hinn's claim, giving to his ministry is more like an investment than anything else. The promised payoff from a god seems to be the primary motivation to give, considering the emphasis Hinn places on it. Hinn encourages believers, even those who are struggling financially, to give to God. But how exactly does one give to God? Is giving to Hinn really the same as giving to a god? I humbly suggest that believers think long and hard before giving money to any person who is enjoying an extravagant and luxurious lifestyle that is far above their own. Clearly, Benny Hinn is not sacrificing much, considering that he lives in a mansion, flies in a private jet, drives luxurious automobiles, and wears shoes that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Enough about money. Is a God really doing any healing at Benny Hinn's event or anywhere else? Do gods really heal us if we ask them to? Many believers have no doubt that their God can and does heal. There must be millions of stories, sincerely believed, about prayers working to cure the sick. But of course, no one talks much about all the prayers that failed. If stories of faith healings prove that a particular God is real, then it means many other gods must be real too, because numerous gods have been credited with miraculous healings since the beginnings of civilization. Anecdotes simply aren't good enough because every religion has them. Scientific studies might be able to answer the question, but there's never been a single credible scientific study that conclusively shows that faith healing or prayer works. Some studies have been hyped up in the news in recent years, but upon further analysis, all of them have been found to be unconvincing. In fairness, this is a very difficult thing to test. I mean, I'm not sure if it can even be tested to everyone's satisfaction. Everybody's different, and no disease or injury is exactly like any other. People may not be aware of it, but most illnesses and injuries heal on their own, and doctors aren't sure why. When Christians, Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Jews, and other believers recover from illnesses and injuries, there's not necessarily a good reason to credit their gods, even if medical science can't explain it. Sometimes the human body just comes through on its own. There's still much to be learned about the immune system, for example. Therefore, defaulting to the explanation that some unusual recovery must be the result of divine magic is premature. One indication that faith healing is not a real phenomenon is that it just hasn't caught on despite centuries of hype spread across numerous religions all over the world. Yes, millions of people believe in it. Yes, some refuse medical treatment in order to gamble their life on prayers. But many more millions of people are not convinced that it works, and their actions show it. With the exception of people living in extreme poverty who have no choice, most believers in developed nations head straight to the emergency room when they cut their foot open on a piece of broken glass, for example. They're not content to pray for the skin to come back together infection-free. They find the nearest doctor as fast as they can. Why? I mean, if their God can cure AIDS and cancer, as many claim, then why not a simple laceration? Why aren't hospitals staffed with shamans and preachers rather than doctors and nurses? If faith healing really worked, wouldn't we all be relying on it by now? After centuries of claims and stories of healed people, we would know for sure by now if the claim is valid. There would be no skeptics left. Furthermore, if one group of believers had a God that was real and consistently cured their diseases, then everyone would have noticed and joined their belief system long ago. Clever skeptics point out that the God never seems to be able to heal amputees. Why is that? Surely some unfortunate guy who lost his leg in a car accident and some little girl who stepped on a landmine deserve divine healings at least as much as that drug addict from whom Benny Hinn and his God supposedly cured. I mean, I can't speak for every non-believer, but I think that'd do it for me. I would believe in a God who could regenerate flesh and bone right before my eyes. My skepticism about faith healing's ability to work, as advertised, doesn't mean I do not recognize the potential for it to offer some kind of meaningful boost to a patient's emotional state and maybe even aid healing in some cases. Yes, faith healing probably does help sometimes, but not necessarily in the way believers think it does. It's not difficult to imagine faith healing, quote unquote, working via the placebo effect. The placebo effect is a widely known phenomenon, but still not fully understood. It occurs when a person seems to benefit from a medical treatment that is not really a medical treatment. Taking a sugar pill in place of real medicine is the classic example. It seems that simply going through the motions of treatment and believing that it is a valid treatment helps some people heal from some illnesses sometimes. Something apparently happens between the mind and body that aids healing. This is the power of suggestion, and it might explain some cases where people have claimed that faith healing helped them. But the placebo effect makes it difficult or impossible to know for sure if a God or the power of suggestion was responsible for any benefit. And we can never forget the possibility of a natural recovery that might have occurred with or without faith healing and the placebo effect. Finally, I have noticed in personal encounters that many believers will credit their God for improved health, even though they were being treated by a doctor and taking medication at the same time they were praying for a cure. I should add that I am well aware that faith healing, whether it works or not, can be comforting to someone who is hurt, frightened, or desperate. I know firsthand because I was once quote unquote healed while lying on my back, semi-conscious in the middle of a street. I had been riding my bicycle when a careless driver pulled out in front of me. I was going too fast to steer around him, so I hit hard and was launched like a space chimp. I'm fairly athletic, however, and reacted well, successfully pulling off a move so cool it would have impressed an Olympic gymnast. I managed to plant one hand on the car's hood as I sailed by. This helped to stabilize my flight and gave me a better chance of flipping my body far enough around to land on my feet on the other side of the car. Unfortunately, my moment of supreme athletic grace was followed by what may be the dorkiest belly flop in human history. My feet rotated too far under me and I crash landed hard in the street. I was out for a minute or so, but when the fog began to lift, I discovered that my wild ride was not quite over. On my back and looking up at the night sky, I saw that I was surrounded by several very large Jamaican women wearing shiny dresses and fancy church hats. Apparently, they had just finished a worship service at a nearby church and were eager to practice what they had just heard preached. Circling above me like angels, or maybe zeppelins, they shouted, "Lord, heal this boy! Come, Jesus, and help him! Help him now," said another. "In Jesus' name we pray." I was dizzy, hurting, but also quite flattered. How sweet, I thought to myself. They don't even know me, and yet they care enough to try and heal me right out here in the middle of the road. I was touched. Despite the pain, I felt good. Believe it or not, those ladies helped me feel better, a lot better. In no time, I was back on my feet, bruised and scraped, but okay. To this day, I am grateful to those kind church ladies for their concern. I'm sure I would have been down and out much longer without their efforts, but does this mean that a God magically cleared my head and soothed my wounds? No! More likely, I benefited from the psychological boost of feeling love. I was also under a bit of pressure to please the ladies and bystanders by showing them that I was going to be okay. They prayed so hard for me, I didn't want to let them down. I was highly motivated to get up and smile, so I did. It's likely that something similar to this goes on many times at faith healing events. The sick people know how the script is supposed to go, and nobody wants to be the jerk that God doesn't like enough to heal. So chances are, many people are going to say they feel better no matter what. The bottom line on faith healing is that, although it could be a real phenomenon, no one has ever been able to show that it is. If the scientific method can show that penicillin works, for example, shouldn't it have shown by now that faith healing works for millions of people all around the world? But it hasn't. Given the huge payoff if faith healing actually did cure people, it's very likely that we would have recognized it by now and fully incorporated it into modern healthcare accordingly. There would be no resistance if it worked. The fact that faith healing is still on the fringes and only often used as a last resort by virtually all believers who can afford the services of medical science indicates that it almost certainly doesn't work as advertised. Therefore, at this time, faith healing cannot be considered a good reason to believe in a God. Chapter 17, anything is better than being an atheist. The fool says in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They do abominable deeds. There is none that does good. That is from Psalms 14:1. I don't know that atheists should be considered as citizens, nor should they be considered patriots. That was President George H.W. Bush. One of the reasons people say they hold tight to their belief in a God or gods is that they think atheism is a fate to be avoided at all costs. Many believers won't even consider the possibility that their God doesn't exist because an atheist, in their view, is not much better than a serial killer or a child molester. It should be no surprise that many people think this way, considering how non-belief is so often mocked, discouraged, and forbidden by religious leaders, as well as within holy books. Some belief systems declare that atheism is an offense worthy of execution. Sounds like somebody's a little insecure about their beliefs. Why are believers so uptight about atheism? These feelings run so deep and so strong that many people just trust non-believers less than people who believe in rival gods. This is odd to say the least. Why, for example, do so many Christians feel more comfortable with Muslims than atheists? Given the bloody history and current tensions between the two belief systems, why do many Muslims feel more at ease around a Hindu than an atheist? Why is belief in any gods preferable to belief in no gods? Perhaps this is because it's seen as being better to at least play the game, even if it's for a different team. Atheists, however, refuse to play ball and therefore may be a little disorienting to believers. My suspicion is that believers tend to feel this way because the mere existence of an atheist casts doubt on their assumptions that signs of a God are all around us and that belief is somehow necessary to live a normal life. The popular notion among believers that non-believers are bad people, by definition, is so out of line with the facts that it's comical. I try to be understanding about it, even though it's terribly insulting. I have been in churches and heard Christian preachers talk about their God being the only possible source of morality and how turning your back on this God leads to crime, drug addiction, wife beating, gambling, pornography, jaywalking, so forth. Not believing in a God can lead to genocide and world wars, according to many believers. They love to cite examples of evil atheists in an attempt to prove that non-belief really does make moral behavior impossible. Adolf Hitler is almost always the first name believers drop to demonstrate the inevitable horrors of atheism. We'll see later in this chapter why Hitler is the wrong choice for atheism's poster boy. But first, it is important to understand that linking atheism to despicable people doesn't prove anything. The fact that some people are bad in the past, didn't believe in gods, it doesn't prove that gods exist any more than history's many religious tyrants and pious mass murderers prove that gods don't exist. Furthermore, believers should not try to play the guilt by association game because they'll lose every time. Over the last few thousand years, religion has directly motivated far more hatred and violence than atheism. Remember, atheism is the absence of belief, nothing more. Many have killed for gods throughout history, but few have killed for nothing. Believers often cite the 20th century's godless communism and the horrific death tolls of atheists Stalin, Mao Zedong, and Pol Pot as a strike against non-belief. But the fact is, those dictators were primarily motivated by power and politics, not an agenda of critical thinking and skepticism. They didn't have millions of people killed in order to make the world safe for free thinkers. They killed to gain and maintain social, economic, military, and political power. By stressing Stalin's atheism, believers seem to suggest that he would have been a much nicer fellow if only he had believed in a God. My hunch is that this former church choir boy and seminary student might have been even worse if he believed that God was on his side while he ruled the Soviet Union. Religious belief could have provided Stalin with even more motivation to murder just as easily as it might have cooled him down. But given its record, religion certainly cannot be counted on to always bring out the best in people. Since Adolf Hitler lives on as the most notorious atheist in the mind of so many believers today, it's important to point out that Hitler was not an atheist. Yes, Hitler was a believer, at least he was according to his own written and spoken words. Hitler was raised a Christian and was active in his local church as a boy. As an adult, he quoted the Bible and drew upon religion for inspiration. Consider these lines from his book Mein Kampf. Quote, "Hence, today I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator. By defending myself against the Jew, I am fighting for the work of the Lord. And, for God's will gave men their form, their essence, and their abilities. Anyone who destroys his work is declaring war on the Lord's creation, the divine will." Even more significant, virtually every one of Hitler's enthusiastic supporters were believers too, from most of his generals right down to the Third Reich's street sweepers. Millions of German troops marched off to battle in World War II, wearing belt buckles that said Gott mit uns, which is God is with us, engraved on them. Christian crosses were prominent features at many Nazi rallies. There are many photos of Hitler praying and attending ceremonial events with Christian leaders. Atheists were not the ones forcing Jews to board trains bound for death camps. Believers did that. Anyone who knows anything about Germany under Hitler would never call it an atheistic society. Of course, it's possible that Hitler, an astute politician, simply pretended to be a believer when it suited his purposes. Maybe he secretly was an atheist, but that is impossible to know. Anyone who claims that would have to also argue that Stalin could have been a devout Christian secretly and only pretended to be an atheist to serve his political purposes. We can never know for sure what anyone really believes, because belief happens in the privacy of the mind. Words and actions are all we can go by, and Hitler's words and actions indicate that he was a believer in a God. It is reasonable to assume that most believers, like most atheists, just want to be good people and live a good life. The thought of taking on the atheist label is scary for many believers because it carries with it suggestions of immorality, general creepiness, and perhaps even the sinister hand of Satan at work. But it doesn't take too much effort to think through the false idea that atheists are bad people. For example, if non-belief leads to a less moral life than belief, then wouldn't atheists be convicted of crimes at a disproportionately higher rate than believers? But this is not how it plays out in the real world. Jails and prisons are filled with many believers and very few atheists. And what about the many obviously immoral wars fought exclusively between believers? For example, there are very few atheists in sub-Saharan Africa, yet that region is plagued with numerous wars, decade after decade. Who can be blamed but believers? Anyone who reviews history and surveys the world today cannot honestly claim that atheists deserve to be thought of as untrustworthy or dangerous people. Regardless of the facts, sadly, someone who lives their life without believing in a God is still too suspicious for many believers to embrace as a friend and equal. As a result, atheists face significant prejudice, even in modern times, and even in some developed and democratic countries that should know better. In the United States, for example, despite all the talk about tolerance, diversity, and freedom, there's a shockingly high level of prejudice against atheists. A 2006 University of Minnesota study asked people to identify the group that does not at all agree with my vision of American society. Atheists topped the list with 39.6%. Muslims were second at 26.3%, and homosexuals were third with 22.6%. The study also revealed that American parents are more likely to disapprove of their children marrying atheists than any other minority group. It wasn't even close, as 47.6% said an atheist is the last person on earth they wanted to see their child with. Second was Muslims, followed by African Americans. It must really be tough for a gay African American atheist these days. The study's authors, Penny Edgell, Joseph Gertais, I guess that's how you say it, and Douglas Hartman, were surprised to find such strong prejudice directed against atheists. Atheists are at the top of the list of groups that Americans find problematic in both public and private life, and the gap between acceptance of atheists and acceptance of other racial and religious minorities is large and persistent. It is striking that the rejection of atheists is so much more common than rejection of other stigmatized groups. For example, while rejection of Muslims may have spiked in post-9/11 America, rejection of atheists was higher. The possibility of same-sex marriage has widely been seen as a threat to a biblical definition of marriage, as Massachusetts, Hawaii, and California have tested the idea. And the debate over the ordination of openly gay clergy has become a central point of controversy within many churches. In our survey, however, concerns about atheists were stronger than concerns about homosexuals. Most atheists are well aware of this prejudice. They often keep their non-belief a secret, sometimes even to family members and close friends, because they don't want to upset or disappoint people they care about. They don't want to have to endure ridicule or rejection. Non-believers even may fear becoming victims of violence or workplace discrimination, and who can blame them? When believers tie atheism to Hitler, Stalin, and Satan, it can be a risky topic to bring up at the family dinner table or around the water cooler at work. Apart from the morality issue, there's another reason why many believers are more uneasy about non-believers than they are about people who follow rival belief systems. Remember the classic fairy tale, The Emperor's New Clothes? People can debate the king's magical clothes and disagree over details about the workmanship, so long as they all see some clothes. But if someone points out that the clothes aren't even there, the parade is in trouble. It's more comfortable, apparently, to bicker over what the gods are named, how they want to be worshipped, who speaks for them on earth, and what their clothes look like, than it is to hear that gods might not exist at all. Believers who dislike, mistrust, and discriminate against atheists based on their decision to think and behave this way on nothing but plain old shallow-minded prejudice. This is precisely the kind of blind ignorance that is stupid, immoral, and usually harmful to everyone in the end. Atheism is not a club, and atheists are not necessarily united by anything other than their lack of belief in a God. Atheism simply means no belief, and that nets a diverse group of people. Just as it is with believers that there are good and bad atheists. Just as it is with religious people, there are kind atheists and there are atheists who are jerks, such as myself. Deciding to dislike all non-believers rather than judge them as individuals is indefensible. By the way, not that name dropping proves anything, but this immoral atheism crowd that many believers love to hate includes many notable figures who seem like fairly respectable people. Here's just a few: Thomas Edison, Ernest Hemingway, Isaac Asimov, Noam Chomsky, Mark Twain, James Watson, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Stephen Hawking, Carl Sagan. Are all these evil people? Are these people you wouldn't want to hire or have as neighbors? Are they fools who have never done good, as the Bible claims about all non-believers? No matter how illogical and unfair it may be, atheists do not find easy or broad acceptance in strongly religious countries such as the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Afghanistan. But it's important to keep in mind that this has nothing to do with whether or not gods exist. Some believers make the mistake of assessing truth by measuring popularity. Yes, atheism is not fashionable, and atheists sometimes have to watch their back. But this is about who is prejudiced, not who is on the right side of reality. This is about being different. This is like the high school in crowd determining who is cool and who isn't. It's the majority looking down their collective noses at yet another minority. Without a doubt, future generations will shake their heads and wonder how such an attitude could ever have existed. Perhaps some of the prejudice can be explained by believers misreading how atheists view their gods. Contrary to what many believers think, atheists do not insult or fight against anyone's God. They don't reject anyone's God. Atheists can't do any of this because for them, gods don't exist. Atheists are not believers who choose not to worship a God. They are people who have decided, they are not people who have decided to hate a God. Atheists are people who do not believe any gods exist. How can one insult something that doesn't exist? How can atheists fight against something they don't think is there? Yes, some atheists might insult believers or strongly oppose a religion, but these are significantly different things from directing rage or rudeness toward a real God. Atheists, by definition, can only take issue with the belief people have in gods. Non-believers do not see themselves as the enemies of gods. They can't be because atheists are waiting to be convinced that the gods are even there. A humorous side of prejudice against atheists is that believers are also atheists. Yes, every person on earth, including every believer, is a non-believer to a degree. For example, the Christian is a non-believer just like all those atheists they don't trust when it comes to the Hindu gods. Christians are skeptical of the claims of Hinduism and conclude that all those gods were simply made up by people long ago. Christians are hardcore atheists on this matter, despite the fact that Hinduism is much older than Christianity and has 1 billion confident believers, can cite ancient writings in support of its claims, and has countless stories of miracles and life-changing events that Hindus credit their gods for. Muslims are staunch non-believers when it comes to Jesus being a god. Muslims declare loud and clear that their God never had a son. They take note of the absence of evidence and conclude that the resurrection story is fiction. More than 1 billion Muslims are atheistic towards Jesus, despite the claims of miracles, ancient writings in support, and all the miracles and life-changing experiences that Christians credit Jesus for. Believers might benefit from asking themselves why it is they do not accept the claims of other religions. Why are they so much more skeptical of beliefs other than their own? If they apply their critical thinking and skepticism equally, believers may discover an entirely new perspective on their religion. Remember, both the believer and the atheist are doubters. They reject many gods alike. The only difference is that the atheist went all the way and left no god unchallenged. Fuck me, dude. All right, I'm tired. My head hurts. I feel like I need another fresh pot of coffee and a blunt. So I'm finna get off of here, but I've been reading 50 Reasons People Give for Believing in a God by Guy P. Harrison. And we just finished chapter 17. So when I start reading again, who knows when that'll be? It'll be chapter 18, titled My God Made the Human Body. And it starts with a quote from George Carlin that says, if this is the best God can do, I'm not impressed. It's going to be a good chapter. But anywho, I'm actually on now, as far as reading this book to you guys, I'm on chapter 18. But I'm in my own personal reading, I'm at chapter 24, which means technically I'm reading the book twice at the same time, which would technically mean that I would be reading it for the fourth time. But that's fine because I planned on doing that anyway. It's such a good book. Oh my God. But yeah, so oh fuck. What I say? Chapter what? 18? Hold on, let me go back there. Because I need to like put a bookmark there so I know that's where I left off. Because I got a bookmark in the book for where I'm actually at, and then I have another bookmark for where I left off with y'all. So I don't, you know what I'm saying, jump the gun or nothing. But anywho. Thanks you guys for watching and whatnot. Thank you for the moderators. It might only be one up in here, but good looking out on moderating. You know what I'm saying? Keeping the fuckery to a minimum. But yeah, man, I'm finna get off here. I gotta make some coffee. I'm about to finish this blunt and then roll probably 2 more, dog. It's time to get super duper high, if you know what I'm talking about. And then after that, yeah, I mean, probably fucking, I don't know. I'm gonna definitely get some dinner. I just don't know what I want to eat. Like I low key want to get like some chicken wings or some fucking, oh no, man. Like I had burgers the other day, but I kind of want burgers again. No, low key, I just want some more fries. Now the other day I had showed on the video some Ore-Ida fries, but they were shoestring fries. I highly do not recommend you get those. Like I couldn't. I've tried twice now. I even tried to doctor them up with like my own homemade fucking sauce and cheese and whatnot. It only minimally helped. That shit, bruh. If you're gonna get Ore-Ida fries, you might as well get the crinkle cut straight up, because you wasting your time if you get the shoestring shit. If you want shoestrings fries, take your ass to McDonald's and get you some, because goddamn it, they probably do them the best. But trying to get motherfucking Ore-Ida brand shoestring fries, or even if I would have got like goddamn fucking Kroger brand shoestring fries, son, them shits just don't hit the same. You know what I mean? Like, anyway, so I'm talking about fries like I got some. I mean, I had some. No, I mean I do, but I don't plan on eating them. But I do got some crispy rounds, some Ore-Ida crispy rounds. I'll probably make them. You know what I mean? Like I got a hankering for some potatoes, some fried potatoes with salt. You know what I mean? With some ketchup. So I mean, I don't know, but yeah, fam. Or either or. Man, I don't know, bro. Like I don't fucking know. Oh shit. My bad. I kind of want pizza too, though, for real, because I ain't had pizza in a few days, son. And I love pizza. I'm a pizza head. You know what I'm saying? So I low key want some up. What'd you say? Charlie's restaurant has the best fries. Real talk. Ooh, what? Who is Charlie's? Who is Charlie's? You talking about old Charlie's? You just said Charlie's. So get you some potatoes and pizza. Mary Jane, there is this one place low key we got called I'm trying to think of it. Like it's to me, it's one of the best pizza places in the city. You know what I mean? But I'm trying to think of God, because I don't go there that often because it's like kind of far from my house, and I don't trust DoorDashers to be bringing my shit, bro. Like I'm cool. They be bringing it back. The pizza be all half slid to one side and shit. Shit be all fucked up, cold and shit. I'm like, man, what the fuck, bro? Y'all niggas already got tipped anyway. So I'm trying to think of the name of it, man. It's not called Ghost Light, because that's Ghost Light Coffee. We got a Ghost Light Coffee, and I haven't been there yet, but I low key want to check it out just to see like what's up, because I am a coffee fanatic. But fuck, man, what's the name of this motherfucking pizza? Old Scratch. That's what it's called. Old Scratch Pizza. Man, let me tell you, now it's a Dayton pizza, you know what I'm saying? Like it's a Dayton pizza company, so you know you ain't gonna find them nowhere else. But I mean that shit slap. Now it don't slap harder than like Giannino's, you know what I'm saying? But we only recently got a Giannino's pizza. But yeah, it ain't better than that. I mean, well, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you give them Giannino's, but straight up, yeah, man, this goes. What I say? What's the name of it again? Old Scratch. Yeah, Old Scratch. Look that shit up, man. Check it out. Like, I mean, if you ain't in Dayton, you ain't gonna be able to get it, but you can look it up and see what I'm talking about. Old Scratch Pizza. That shit slaps. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I don't know. I'm probably not gonna get that either because it's just kind of far from my house. But yeah, I think it's a pretty decent name, Limwell. You know what I mean? You said 3 cups a day, Josh. Nigga, I had 3 cups of coffee for breakfast. You know what I'm saying? Like, 3 cups. You know how many pots of coffee I make in one day? Like, I'm surprised I don't bleed Arabica beans. You know what I'm saying? Like, I am a coffee connoisseur. You understand what I'm saying? Like, I drink coffee more than anything else in any given day. I don't drink water. I don't drink soda. Now, if I'm at work, I'll drink coffee and apple juice because I'm sorry, 7-Eleven, the motherfucking gas station, has the best in-house apple juice ever. I have never had better apple juice in my life than 7-Eleven's, what's it called? Like some orchard, some shit. But that shit, I mean, to me, it tasted like biting into a fresh Granny Smith, that green shit, the green one, with the, you know, oh my God. Like it tastes like I'm just drinking the juice straight out the apple without having to crunch. Like, I don't know, it's fucking, but then someone else said it tasted more like a cider. I think that's why it goes so hard, because that shit's a cider. However, I noticed that when I went to a different Speedway, because Speedway, like 7-Eleven owns Speedway. So when I went to a different Speedway, they had the apple juice there, but it looked different, and so much so that I didn't even know that was the apple juice, because I'm used to a certain look. Like it kind of has like a cloudy look. You know how like apple cider looks. You've seen apple cider. You know, it's like you can't see through it. Not like apple juice, you know what I'm saying, where it's got like kind of translucent. You can kind of see shapes and shit on the other side of the bottle. You can't do that with this apple juice. That's why I low-key think it's cider, but it doesn't say it's cider. It just says it's juice. But anyway, it's 7 Select. That's what it's like. Orchard Grove 7 Select apple juice. I think that's what it's called. But anyway, it's fucking delicious, bro. Oh my God. Like, however, like I said, I went to another Speedway and they had a new design on the bottle, and the bottle looked like any other apple juice. I bought it thinking it was the same shit because it was supposed to be. But it was, I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Like, it was the same brand. It was the same apple juice, only they must have changed where they got their juice from, because now it didn't taste any different from like Tropicana apple juice or Mott's apple juice or some other fucking Summer Breeze or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? Like, it tastes like that shit, like just some regular ass off the fucking Walmart shelf apple juice. It didn't taste special. In fact, I don't even think they needed to keep it in the refrigerator. Like, I think they were just doing that just because that's where they kept them at. And that's where they keep like the orange juices and the raspberry and the lemonade and all that shit. So that's just where they keep them. But it's really just so you'll have a cold beverage. But before the shit, before they changed the whatever they're using for the apple juice, it has something in it like that you like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so if you go and get one now and look at the bottom before you shake it, it has like a buildup of shit at the bottom. And it looks like it could be apple shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't fucking know. Like, but that shit, you know what I mean? So you always gotta shake it. You know what I'm saying? So that shit like goes through the entire bottle, whatever, and then drink it, and then that shit slaps. But the new shit, you don't gotta shake it at all. That shit just like piss in a bottle. All right, man, I'm out of here, y'all. I talked long enough. Holla back.